Hello and welcome to Lamplighter. Today is May 30. Today in our daily Bible reading, we continue to work our way through the book of Ecclesiastes, which, as I have mentioned before, is simply like looking over the shoulder of the wise Solomon as he pens these words and as he pens this journal through which he's going on a conquest. He's going on a journey trying to find the meaning of life, hoping to find that victory at the end of his search. But along the way, the search is very negative, very challenging. The things that he sees and the things that he experiences are things that are discouraging to him, things that are disappointing to him. And so as we plod along with him through this journey, we ourselves may get discouraged or depressed. We ourselves might start to wonder, where is God and what is really our purpose for being here? So let's continue on the journey together. Remember, I promised you that if we work our way through the journey, then the reward will be valuable at the end. I also want to remind you that the best way to read the book of Ecclesiastes is to read it at one sitting. Go through the whole journey, the ups, the downs, the ebbs, the flows, and then listen to the conclusion that is drawn by the wise King Solomon at the conclusion of the book. But for our purposes today, we'll continue to take off little pieces at a time and try to understand the struggle that this wise king is going through as he makes this journey. Today's section is entitled The Value of Wisdom. If anyone knows how to speak to the value of wisdom, it should certainly be Solomon, because Solomon, of course, was the wisest man of his day, because God granted him a very special measure of wisdom per his request. God was very pleased with that request and honored it even far more than Solomon could have ever imagined. There's a little paragraph at the beginning of today's reading simply called Proverbs of the Teacher that I want to remind you of. It is on page 684. Here we read, not only was the teacher wise, but also he imparted knowledge to the people. I want to pause there for just a moment because I want us to be reminded that Solomon is not only one who receives wisdom from God, but he's wise enough to know that this gift of God is best enjoyed when it's distributed or shared with others. God has always worked this way. God has always sought to be a blessing to his people with the desire that they in turn will take the blessing and use it to become a blessing to other people or to share that blessing with other people. And God still works that way today. He wants to bless your life and he wants to bless mine, but he expects us, as he does, to share those blessings with everyone around us, to be a conduit, if you will, of his blessings, distributing them to anyone as they have need. We read on, he pondered and searched out and set in order many proverbs. We've already talked about the fact that he has written a number of proverbs, many of which are not even recorded. And these that we're about to read are recorded in the book of Ecclesiastes rather than where you might expect to find them in the book of Proverbs. The teacher searched to find just the right words, and what he wrote was upright and true. So we need to listen to his words of wisdom. Then there's a section in today's reading called Various Proverbs, and that's exactly what it is, kind of a miscellaneous collection of wise sayings. Let's read some of them together. Do not be quickly provoked in your spirit, for anger resides in the lap of fools. Don't have a quick temper, he says. Don't have a short fuse, because you'll find yourself being foolish when you overreact. Or how about this one? Do not say, why were the old days better than these? For it is not wise to ask such questions. We don't need to be the kind of people who are always saying, oh, I just long for the good old days. Because what typically happens is we forget that the good old days themselves weren't always all that great either. It's just that our memory has sort of polished over or glossed over the negative parts. Let's not focus on the past, the wise man says. Let's focus on where we are in the future. That is where wisdom will come. He writes, there is not a righteous man on earth who does what is right and never sins. It's very similar to Paul's words in the New Testament when he says, there is none righteous, no, not one. When he says we've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, we need to recognize our own limitations as human beings, that we are flawed human beings filled with sin, and we need a Savior. As dead flies give perfume a bad smell, so a little folly outweighs wisdom and honor. It seems that sometimes the negative, though it's very small, can outweigh lots of positive. Just as these dead flies he describes are few, they can overwhelm the smell of this beautiful aroma of the perfume, and all you smell is the deadness of the flies, the stench that is created. He says that's the way wisdom and folly works. You may have lots of wisdom, but just a little bit of folly or foolishness gets in the way, and that tends to overpower everything. As you turn the page on these various Proverbs, there are still more. I love the next one that I want to share with you because it reminds me of my childhood. My mother had this knack for always knowing what was going on with the kids, even when we thought we had perfectly prevented her from knowing it. I would ask her sometimes, how did you know that? How did you find out? And she would always say the same thing, well, a little bird told me. Now, I didn't realize it at the time when I was a child, but as I grew and started to study the Bible, I see that that's not original with my mother. Listen to these words. Do not revile the king even in your thoughts, or curse the rich in your bedroom, because a bird of the air may carry your words, and a bird on the wing may report what you say. You have to be careful of anything you think has been hidden, anything you think has been kept quiet, because news of that spreads as though a bird in the air is whispering it in the ear of the person from whom you're trying to hide it. Wow. Even in the old days of the Bible and the wise man Solomon, such a saying was predominant. Then we read this one. As you do not know the path of the wind or how the body is formed in a mother's womb, so you cannot understand the work of God, the maker of all things. We need to acknowledge the fact that God is infinite. And though we are created in his image, we are finite beings. There are things about God that we will never understand or comprehend. That's why it's so important that we be people of faith, that we learn to take him at his word and trust that he has only our best intentions in mind. And then we move on from this section to a section called Sayings of the Wise. And here the question is asked, is it possible to have too much of a good thing? For example, the writer says, of making many books there is no end, and much study wearies the body. Now, books are a good thing. They have lots of information. Study is a good thing. It's a way to learn. But too much even of that makes a person grow weary. We have to keep everything in moderation. Then there's a section entitled Wisdom Comes from Sorrow, where we read, a good name is better than fine perfume. It's important to have a good reputation, a good character recognized by others, but also to understand that sometimes life gives us sorrow and pain and grief, but the wise person is the one who learns from those experiences and becomes a better person. He talks about the danger of extremism. He says the man who fears God will avoid all extremes. And again, sometimes it's possible that we can have too much of a good thing and it's no longer a good thing. He writes, few choose wisdom. This only have I found. God made mankind upright, but men have gone in search of many schemes. God gives us the ability to find wisdom, but so many times we choose our own path, which takes us a different direction. And then finally, we close with the enriching nature of wisdom. Wisdom brightens a man's face and changes his hard appearance. Wisdom is something for which we all strive, something for which we all long. But we need to understand, as Solomon does, that true wisdom only comes from God himself. Isn't it great to be a lamplighter? His word is a lamp to our feet and a light to our path. I hope you have a blessed day.